Welcome to the video guide for Volk's Wrath Expert, a negative uprising boss fight released as part of patch 1.15.1 of Dragalia Lost. This is an incredibly belated guide since this fight was already old by the time I started doing guides, but with legend difficulty on the horizon I figured I'd get my credentials in place before that arrives. My name is Xenozilus and let's get straight to it. As a primer, there are two effects present throughout the fight: Plague and Life Drain. Plague is inflicted by certain attacks throughout the fight, and will set an adventurer's affliction resistances to -100%. This means that while plagued, certain attacks from Volk will inflict afflictions with a guaranteed chance. Plague will wear off after 90 seconds, or much faster if the adventurer receives healing, typically with 2 ticks of regen heal or 1 burst heal. If an adventurer is near a plagued adventurer while the effect wears off, the plague effect will spread. Life Drain causes Volk to heal from hitting adventurers with certain attacks for a portion of the damage dealt. However, if these attacks hit a plagued adventurer, Volk will receive no healing and will become plagued instead, setting his affliction resistances to 25% in Phase 1 and 50% in Phase 2. Keep these in mind as we go through the rest of the mechanics. I'll bring these up again when they're relevant. As with all Agato fights, certain mechanics and attacks will be skipped or repeated based on phase progression and remaining hit points. The fight starts with Volk standing in the middle of the arena for a couple of seconds before disappearing for Pestilent Wind. This is unavoidable and will inflict the entire team with Plague. Shortly afterwards, Volk will reappear with a spin attack, which can be iframed. Due to the following mechanics, it's highly recommended to bring a healer with skill prep to heal off Plague immediately as he spins. Players should avoid overlapping to prevent Plague from spreading as it's removed. Following this is Underdog's scheme combined with Ravenous Claws. Volk will spawn 6 bombs around the arena. The red circles with stars will inflict stun when detonated, and the green circles with bubbles will inflict sleep. At the same time, Volk will move to the center of the arena and fire out 8 shurikens in a star pattern, telegraphed by purple lines. Players should walk into the circles appropriate to their resistance to detonate and remove the bombs. Be sure to not be plagued, as otherwise you'll be afflicted accordingly due to the resistance reduction effect. While you're dealing with these bombs, the 8 shurikens fired to the edge of the arena will target players near Volk, firing in sets of 4. Mind the purple telegraphs as you maneuver to deal with the bombs. These will inflict sleep if you lack sleep res or are plagued. If you fail to deal with the bombs before the end of the phase, they'll cover most of the arena with much larger, damaging explosions. After Ravenous Claws resolves, Volk follows up with Imminent Illness. Each player is targeted with a purple chaser attack. Avoid overlapping with other players as this resolves. If this hits a player with Plague, they'll be poisoned with a particularly strong poison, draining their hit points to 1 point repeatedly over the duration, so be sure to remove Plague before then. Following this is a series of drill attacks. Volk will target the 2 closest players with a drill attack. This can be iframed. Watch the minimap to see if you're being targeted, being sure to roll aside if so. Being hit by this will often prove fatal as the drill is likely to hit multiple times. This is followed by another Pestilent Wind. As before, all players will be inflicted with Plague. To handle the following mechanic, players should spread to 4 separate corners. I know the arena's a circle, but corners is more understandable than 4 equidistant points. Anyway, spread to 4 corners and face towards the middle. For swords, blades, daggers and lances, this is simple enough with charging a force strike and aiming towards the center of the arena. For other classes, just roll in once and only once, or maybe even a bit of slow walking. Hopefully your healer is able to heal off the Plague soon, as Volk will descend with a series of 4 spin attacks. Volk will appear directly behind each player in series before using a purple telegraphed spin attack. If a unit is plagued, they'll be inflicted with sleep and they'll be guaranteed to take the hit, resulting in massive damage. Avoid the attack by releasing your force strike if you were holding one before, or simply by rolling in otherwise. Following this, Volk will reappear in the middle of the arena before starting his next mechanic, Resentment. Volk will cover the majority of the arena in a black fog, leaving an open space in the bottom left of the arena. This fog will inflict Plague, but otherwise it's fairly harmless. During this mechanic, red telegraphs will come from the fog, targeting the player furthest from Volk. These projectile wolves will inflict Plague. This is coupled with another Imminent Illness. Players should be wary of overlapping in the confined space, and the beta will need to avoid both attacks at the same time. Volk will continue to attack the ranged beta with purple telegraphed shurikens, as well as more red telegraphed wolves. Generally, Phase 1 will end around this point. If it continues, Volk will follow Resentment with another set of status bombs and Pestilent Wind before repeating more mechanics. Phase 2 starts with an opening blast. Players should watch their HP levels and consider dragon tanking the phase change if their HP is too low. After this, Volk opens with a series of claw swipes. The first two will be marked with red telegraphs. Occasionally there will be a third swipe indicated with a pair of exclamation points above his head, but no telegraph. This will hit behind him with the blind spot in front of Volk. This is still iframeable though. Volk will then charge towards a ranged unit marked with a red telegraph. Following this is Snapping Squalls. Two players will be marked by purple chasers, prioritizing ranged units. Shortly before resolving, the tracking will slow down before spawning a tornado that follows the marked players for a few seconds. Marked players should retreat towards the edge of the arena, following the edge. The typical convention is to move clockwise. If the fog from a previous resentment is still up, players should bait the squalls into the fog, though take care to manage positioning with low visibility. Getting hit by these squalls will inflict stun, but stun resist characters should take care not to immediately brace if hit, as it will cause a second likely lethal hit. Following this is Summon Wolves. Volk summons some wolves, and then buffs his own strength by 15%. These wolves will inflict plague with their attacks, so take care of them quickly. Considerate players will check that their healers aren't being harassed. Following more charges and claw swipes is the Phase 2 Resentment. This is largely similar to Phase 1, except now Volk is in his second form. Previous mechanics will now overlap with additional swipes, so dodge and iframe these as necessary. Ideally, Volk should break during this part of the fight, skipping the next mechanic, otherwise you'll have to deal with Steel Vitality. Volk hits all players with unavoidable damage and heals for a portion of the damage dealt. Note that he can't receive healing from plagued units, dragons, or if he himself is plagued. If Volk is unlikely to break during Resentment, consider dragon tanking or diving into the fog to plague yourself before Steel Vitality hits. If you still haven't broken Volk yet, you'll have to deal with 4 Snapping Squalls. In runs with low DPS there's a chance you'll see Snapping Squalls targeting all 4 players. I wasn't able to replicate this while recording footage for the expert guide, so the footage you're now seeing is from the master fight. Handle this by retreating to the edge of the arena, evenly spaced apart, and leading the squalls clockwise. Following more wolves, charges and swipes, Volk will use Lunatic Judgement, summoning a Blood Moon target that constantly pulses for damage, healing itself based on damage dealt. If not destroyed in time, the moon will fall, instantly killing all adventurers, even through dragon form. Reserve burst damage for the moon or use another tactic, crowd control. If any wolves are on the field, it's possible to deliberately take an attack from them to receive plague, which will transfer to Volk when the moon attempts to heal. After Volk is plagued, stun him with Rakshas or freeze him with a Lily skill share. With how built most characters nowadays, most runs will resort to bursting down the moon with Gala Mars, though keep the crowd control method in mind for emergencies. After this, mechanics will begin to repeat until you or Volk are defeated. The Volk fight has the potential to drag on quite a bit if Steel Vitality isn't handled correctly, punishing runs with low DPS with even longer clear times. And that's about it in terms of covered mechanics. Most mistakes I see in the fight boil down to improper plague handling near the beginning of the fight. Once you're past the drill attacks in Phase 1, I feel the fight becomes much easier to handle for both healers and DPS. However, the healer has the most responsibility in the fight in my opinion, unless you're not running a healer. Learning to heal this fight requires a bit of practice. You'll have to hold heals for appropriate moments, as being caught without an immediate heal in key moments of the fight can often prove fatal. When it comes to team composition, most teams will run a Halloween Lowen with a variety of DPS. Teams are largely flexible in terms of DPS units, so long as there are at least one stun and one sleep resist character in the team. Teams lacking in either resistance will still be able to clear, though that may involve taking bombs and praying you aren't targeted with a drill attack. There are also speed clear compositions running full Gala Mim, but I'll consider that outside the scope of the guide. If you're struggling with this fight, why not check me out on Twitch? I stream 9:30 PM GMT on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I'll be farming Volk this week, so feel free to hop in for advice or if you have any questions. The link will be in the description below. As always, take it easy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.